In this video, I'm going to break down why Boston's broker fees are actually a good thing.
I'm not quite...
Just kidding. I don't think tenants should have to pay a broker fee, at least not in this day and age. I think the fact that it's normal in Boston for tenants to pay thousands of dollars in broker fees up front before getting into an apartment is a bit of a racket, and there is very little pressure on landlords and brokers to change this process. In this video, we're going to dive into why. If you're like me, the first time you heard of a broker fee was when you moved to Boston, and somehow the rest of the country survives without these broker fees. First, I want to define what is a broker fee. As summarized by ChatGPT, broker fees are fees charged by a real estate agent or broker for their services in helping a renter find an apartment. This fee, which is typically equal to 1 month's rent, which in Boston is thousands of dollars and paid on top of your first month's rent and security deposit to the landlord, is intended to compensate the real estate broker for their time and effort in showing apartments, negotiating with landlords, and helping the renter navigate the rental process. Unquote ChatGPT. On the surface, this description seems like reasonable justification for having a real estate broker. I mean, a broker is providing a service, right? So what's unfair to the tenant about this scenario? Well, first, what if I, as a tenant, don't want a real estate broker? The problem is that for a lot of these apartments, you don't get to choose whether or not you have a real estate broker. The landlord decides, and they won't even consider you as a tenant if you don't use their specific broker. So in Boston, I don't even get my own personal broker to look out for my best interest. It's the landlord's broker looking out for their best interest. As currently structured, with Boston broker fees, I am the one paying thousands of dollars for the landlord's headhunter to get them a new tenant. That makes no sense. Perhaps more importantly, we live in the 21st century. Look, I see why you would need a real estate broker as a tenant before the internet existed. In those days, if you were a tenant, a good broker could screen out sketchy landlords and ensure you ended up in the right area for your lifestyle. But today, we have the ability to go to apartments.com or Zillow, view what is available, and set up showings ourselves. We can watch YouTube channels like this one and use Google Street View to determine what neighborhoods we want to live in before ever stepping foot in Boston. I don't need a broker today. Now, maybe a landlord does want a broker to take care of the administration that comes with onboarding a new tenant. That's fair. I totally get it, and I have no issues with a landlord employing someone to help them find a tenant. I just think the landlord should have to pay this cost, not the tenant. I'm sure some viewers are screaming a certain counterpoint at their screens right now, and that counterpoint is probably this. If landlords had to pay their broker fees on their end, wouldn't they just pass that cost of the broker fee onto the tenant in the price of rent? My answer to that counterpoint is an emphatic yes. They absolutely would pass this cost onto the renter in the monthly rent. I have zero qualms with that. That's business. In this scenario, I'm not responsible for handing you thousands of dollars of rent up front. I would much rather have that spread out over the course of the lease. It's just easier, and with the time value of money, it is definitely the better scenario for the tenant. There's another second order effect here that I would like to point out. Let me put on my landlord hat. Sidebar, before I moved to Boston, I owned a home. I came very close to leasing it out, but decided to sell when I moved here. So I've at least thought about what business as a landlord would entail. So here's the second order effect if this cost is passed on to the landlord. If I were a landlord and now had to pay this broker fee, I would look at what is provided for the cost of 1 month's rent, tell the broker to kick rocks, and find a more effective, efficient, and cheaper method for showing units. Rental contracts are standardized now. Showing apartments can be arranged online. If my place leases for, say, $3,000 per month, I'm confident I can leverage new technology to find a tenant for less than that amount, even if I modify the current broker format to negotiate a lower cost. Obviously, someone who is finding a tenant for me deserves to be compensated. Thousands of dollars with all of the tech available, that seems like a massive stretch. Thus, the cost to find a tenant that will be passed on to the renter would be cheaper than current broker fees a tenant pays up front. So to summarize, in the scenario where landlords are forced to pay the broker fee, they will look for methods to get new tenants that are less expensive, and if they choose to pass that cost on to the tenant, it is a smaller amount that is spread across the length of the lease. Another second order effect of banning broker fees that I propose would benefit tenants is that the ban would encourage landlords to keep tenants. Think about it. landlords aren't going to want to have to pay the cost to a broker just to wait the length of a lease to be reimbursed. Currently, it costs landlords nothing to get a new tenant because the tenant is paying for the broker fees. If there was less turnover in leases, would that help with soaring rent prices in Boston? I don't actually know the answer to this question, but I do know that every time a landlord gets a new tenant, they're likely adjusting the rent to the market norm. That's what I would do at least. So if it costs you nothing to find a new tenant, why not encourage the tenant you already have to leave so you can raise the rent at no cost to you? Just a thought. Currently, there is little pressure forcing broker fees to go anywhere. Say what you will about the new luxury high-rises popping up all over the city, but I found that these places don't typically charge broker fees, so that's at least a bit of a forcing function on the current market that makes landlords compete. One bad effect of broker fees is that they are a barrier of entry for low-income renters. Like, if you're already struggling to make ends meet, the idea of paying an additional month's rent as a fee just to get into an apartment has to be daunting. It's no secret that Boston already has significant issues with income inequality, and in my opinion, broker fees only continue to make it harder for lower-income renters to enter buildings that require broker fees. And now that I say this out loud, maybe that is the end goal of some of these buildings. Mayor Wu has said that she wants to fix the soaring cost of housing in the city of Boston. A rent control plan is being implemented in Boston. I have my own thoughts as to whether or not this is effective, but I do think it's a problem she genuinely wants to fix. However, I am curious why she hasn't tried to get rid of broker fees yet, as this would be one less cost that tenants have to pay up front and could make some apartments more affordable and accessible immediately. In fact, why hasn't Boston tried to do away with broker fees before? Well, at the state level at least, they have tried. In January of 2020, the state of Massachusetts legislature passed a bill that would have prohibited landlords and real estate agents from charging broker fees to renters in the state. However, a month later, Governor Charlie Baker vetoed the bill. His rationale was that getting rid of broker fees could ultimately make it harder for renters to find apartments. Here's his logic. Governor Baker believed the bill would limit the supply of rental units available on the market. His argument was that by prohibiting landlords and real estate agents from charging broker fees, the bill would make it harder for property owners to cover the cost of advertising and showing their units, which could ultimately lead to fewer apartments being listed for rent. This argument makes zero sense to me. As we've stated earlier, the landlord would just pass this cost on to the tenant. And who wouldn't list an apartment? Like, if you don't have a tenant, you're not just going to let your apartment sit there and have the mortgage bleed you out. No, as a landlord, you're going to go find your tenant and get your money. Governor Baker also expressed concern that the bill could be seen as a violation of the state's constitution, suggesting that the bill could infringe on the landlord's right to set their own rental terms. If there's anyone watching this video who can let me know if this is even an accurate interpretation of the Massachusetts state constitution, please let me know in the comments. In the end, the bill's supporters were not able to gather enough votes to override Governor Baker's veto. New York City actually did get rid of their broker fees for a very short time. It lasted all of a few weeks before a state judge intervened to put a stop to the ruling when the state's largest real estate lobbying group, the Real Estate Board of New York City, filed a lawsuit which, shocker, they had the power to win. So we didn't really get to see the effect the elimination of broker fees had on the city. It would have been nice if this legal battle played out for a year or two, because I would have loved to see if the hypotheses we've made here would be proven to be correct. All right, so that's my soapbox rant on broker fees in Boston. It's going to be fun to see who leaves a note in the comments proving that they only read the misleading title of the video and didn't watch a second. Please let me know in the comments if I missed any important aspects of the broker fee process in Boston. I would love to hear your opinion. Please like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe to see similar videos.